My name is Emily Underwood, and today I'm going to be presenting my capstone project on the topic of life expectancy around the world. For my agenda today, I'm going to be going over the introduction, the literature review, the methodology that I used, the data analysis that I conducted, and a conclusion. So I'm going to introduce the problem, objectives, and the significance of my project. The problem that I wanted to address by conducting this data analysis is that global health and longevity are indicators of a nation's development and the well-being of its citizens. However, though economic metrics are typically used as proxies for progress, the modern understanding of sustainability encompasses a broader range of social, environmental, and institutional factors. My objective is to develop a predictive model for life expectancy using the sustainability indicators found in the dataset. The significance of this project is that life expectancy predictions are important for better retirement planning and saving. In addition, the gap between the record lifespan and the national averages shows that there is room for improvement, and understanding the key factors that are limiting life expectancy can help improve the health of billions. I'm going to go over my literature review on this topic. To give some context, before 1700, life expectancy was below 30, and most people died of disease. However, it has risen at an extremely linear rate since then, and it is not approaching a limit. This increase is caused by hygiene and scientific knowledge, of course, to improve health. However, economic growth has had a significant impact, and that is caused by trade and technology. Wealth and health affect each other. Poverty will cause premature deaths because being malnourished makes you so much more susceptible to disease. Some threats to life expectancy that I noted in my literature review have been the suppression of women's education in certain countries due to it reducing hygienic practices in the households, as well as high fertility rates because those will raise infant mortality and cause maternal malnourishment. Now I'm going into the data science side of this project. I began by doing some preliminary cleaning on the data. It was from World Bank and didn't have too many issues. However, I did choose to rename the columns for clarity and simplification. I checked what unique values existed, and I dropped the missing values because some columns had large proportions and over half of their values were missing, while most of them had very few missing values. The largest problem that I found doing this data cleaning was the multicollinearity that exists because of the interlinked nature of these socioeconomic data. The highly correlated features are displayed in the graph on the left, and all the correlations with an absolute value above 0.3 are displayed here. So you can see there is extremely high multicollinearity. And if I move into just the technology subset of this data, you can see that the performance of these features in a model would be very interlinked, as these features are very highly correlated. So I chose to drop these highly correlated features and only left a few independent features that were truly useful for model building. Prior to removing these features, the top predictors for life expectancy were the percentage of individuals using the internet, the particulate emission damage proportion with mobile network coverage, basic drinking water, access to electricity, and the pupil-teacher ratio. After removing the highly correlated features, the final key determinants were the access to electricity, broad money, natural resources depletion, and the proportion of children that were out of school at a primary school age. Now I'm going into the data analysis. The top 4 feature distributions are not normally distributed. As you can see, the access to electricity, which is the top feature, is extremely low variance, between 98% and 100%. The access to electricity is left skewed, and the other features have more of a right skew. Here's the correlation for the top 4 features with life expectancy. The access to electricity has a positive correlation, as well as broad money and children out of school. This is surprising, as you would think it would be the opposite. However, this correlation is fairly weak, and you can see that these points are very far from the line with a lot of outliers. Natural resources depletion has a negative correlation, which is also expected. So I looked into the effect of time over the 18 years of the dataset. Broad money has had the most change over time, and access to electricity has been slightly declining. The absolute correlation of natural resources depletion has remained fairly low and had a lot more variability than the other three. So examining the access to electricity, life expectancy is actually higher in the 99.25 to 99.5% range than 99.5 to 100%, which is again not what I was expecting when looking into this data, and I thought that was notable to share. In the 98 range, it is significantly lower. The maximum value at 98% is about the same as the minimum value for 99%. I started by modeling linear regression as a baseline. The r-squared value that I got signifies the amount of variation that can be explained from the features in the model was 83%. The RMSE was 3.4 years. So that has already achieved a fairly good performance that explains 83% of the variation. And the feature coefficients were highest for the access to electricity, and the carbon dioxide damage had the largest negative impact. And I showed the residual plot to demonstrate how effective this model is. And I continued by going to nonlinear models, and I used two different decision tree models, the random forest and gradient boosted trees. The random forest model had my highest performance of standard error of 2 years and an r-squared of 0.94. And the gradient boosted tree also had a standard error of 2.4 years and an r-squared of 0.92, which is still a good performance. They both had access to electricity as the top feature, and for random forest, the children out of school feature was the second most important, followed by broad money and carbon dioxide damage. For gradient boosted trees, the list is similar, but it does change in order. To conclude my project, I'm going to share the findings, implications, and my potential future work that could be done. The features that I included in my model do successfully explain 94% of the variation in life expectancy, which is considered excellent for global socioeconomic data. Social, economic, governmental, and environmental factors all worked in tandem here to affect life expectancy. The runtime and processing power that was required was low relative to the predictive abilities resulting from this model. The implications of my findings are that global health is a complex, nonlinear system. The linear model did not successfully capture as much as the decision trees. These models help to clarify where government spending should be allocated and which of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are most impactful on life expectancy. Another implication is that the effect of natural resources depletion on lifespan reveals the true cost of growth, and how money is balanced against environmental health will determine if citizens live to see that wealth, which is the most important thing. These models can also be used to hold governments accountable for any system failures and signal corruption, extreme inequality, or a broken healthcare system if they have the variables that they need, but we're still seeing low life expectancies in their countries. Potential future work that I could conduct is to use causal inference methods to determine which associations are actually causal. The future iterations of this project would implement causal inference to isolate the effect of specific sustainability interventions. Scenario-based forecasting could also be used by transforming the random forest, our top model, into a simulation engine, which would allow policymakers to test hypothetical scenarios for their sustainability targets. Finally, spatial and temporal cluster analysis could be conducted to uncover any localized cultural or dietary variables, which are not currently captured in the Global Sustainability Dataset. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and these are my references.